So, hi, I'm Tom Evans, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome back to the Zone Show Joanna Penn. Hi, Joanna.
Hi, Tom. Thanks so much for having me back.
Always a pleasure. Always good to keep tabs on you, see what you're up to, and I did a bit of research. I really do research nowadays because I love just to have a. I thought I'd better just track back in time to see when we met and when we had interviews and stuff like that. And I think we started writing about the same time, didn't we? Around the sort of 2008, 2009
Exactly, and
mark.
you've been a big part of my journey and, helped me release a block around writing fiction. And I still talk about you whenever I talk about my own journey. So, it's brilliant and
Wonderful.
I think this is a really, even right now, this is a good thing for people to learn. Networking with people when you're at the beginning of the process, and then you can kind of grow together over time. And you just never know who's going to end up being a friend years later, do you?
Exactly, but also we've done the same thing, haven't
Mm.
we? So at the time, I was a jobbing bored IT consultant, working with people I didn't really like and all this sort of stuff, and thinking there must be something more to life than this. And here I am in 2015, and here you are in 2015, and in one way or the other, we're making a living out of our writing and our books and everything, which is amazing, isn't it?
And I think, both of us, again, have been through ups and downs and we've tried different things. And, but we've both always come back to that creative spirit, I guess, that drives us both to create new things in the world, but also to make good money. So I think both of those things are important.
Well, don't you think the best money is the money that pops in when you're sleeping?
Well, do you know, it's funny because recently I just hired my husband out of his day job, which is, again, really
Wow.
exciting because we hit some financial goals. But this is one of the great things about creative intellectual property is that, yes, you do make money while you sleep. Now, of course, you and I both know this is not passive income in that it's taken us the time to create it. But once you get some of your processes in place, then yes, the whole making money while you sleep or go for a walk or are out cycling in Croatia as we did recently, it is actually a reality. So it is lovely that both you and I have seen this journey together.
So it can be done, which is great. And interesting, your first book then, How to Enjoy Your Job, it's almost like that is being self-fulfilled.
Well, I do talk about that because that book, How to Enjoy Your Job or Find a New One, isn't available anymore. I withdrew it and I
Yeah.
rewrote it as career change. But what was funny is that first book changed my life. And if people listening haven't written a book yet, I do think that writing your first book, it's you who would probably change the most. And many of us want to change the world, but changing yourself first can often be the first step. It's like loving yourself if you want to be loved, that kind of thing. And yeah, I feel like that book changed my life. And I also learned about self-publishing. I learned about marketing. I learned about the internet. I started a podcast because of that first book. And that's what has led me into writing more nonfiction, getting into writing fiction, and going on to, yeah, essentially leave my job and become a full-time author entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, a lot of people might look at you and I and go like, "Oh, it's easy for you," and this sort of stuff. But of course, it's not easy. We've even though what I don't consider what I do now work because I love it, but I still work hard at it. If you know what I mean. I don't call it hard work. And do you think that tenacity and application are the two qualities that you need to pull this off?
Yeah, and actually, I think that you also have to discover, you and I know about following your bliss, about Joseph Campbell, all that kind of thing. What I'm learning and finding in the writing space is some people get the bug. So I think, again, writing one book, many people feel like they have a book in them, but you and I both got the bug. So it becomes that it's not that you have one book in you, you actually have so many, they're kind of erupting from you and you want to write many more. So I think if you find your passion, like if I hadn't have enjoyed the process of writing, publishing, marketing, you and I enjoy podcasting, the financial returns of podcasting are not that much, to be honest. It's more about connections and the things that happen that the universe throws at you because you've connected. And I think that the tenacity, discipline is often used, all of that comes because you found what you love to do. Now, for some people, they might find that in other things. So, like, I have a friend who's an adventurer, friends who are other kinds of artists. So, if people are finding that they aren't loving this, then they won't make it. But that's fine. You can go and do something else. So, I feel like there's often a pressure with writing that you have to make a full-time living, or why aren't you doing very well? Or, but actually, I think you have to discover what you love and really do that. And if you enjoy, like you said, you and I work really hard. I work a lot of hours pretty much every day. I do take days off, honest, and I do a lot of research trips. But I don't think of it as work. I think of it as my life, my passion, my hobby, as well as my income, and a very good income. So yeah, I agree with you. It is hard work in inverted commas, but equally, if you love it, it doesn't feel like work, and you get up in the morning and you're like, yay, I'm doing this today.
The next book just pops out when you're not expecting it.
Oh, you know how this works. The idea machine. I mean, the ideas are not a problem. The problem is the execution.
For sure. So anyway, so what you've done now, I guess, coming full circle, looking back on what you've done, you've written this helpful guide, How to Make a Living from Your Writing. And it says here, books, blogging, and more, which is kind of interesting, isn't it? Because the book, since we started back in about 2008, then that whole industry's changed. Was Kindle out there? I don't think Kindle was out there.
No, when I did that first self-published book, I literally printed books and had them in my garage. There was no Kindle. The international Kindle came a year after America, and I was in Australia, you were in England. And yeah, there really was. Blogging was still in the space of, it wasn't massively commercial. It is amazing how much things have changed. And now, as you and I both know, you can make a living online. And so that's why I called the book Making Money from Books and Blogging and More, because my business, like yours, is made up of a kind of multiplicity of things. I write fiction and non-fiction. I'm a paid professional speaker. I have courses like you as well, and I have affiliate sales, which are commission on selling other people's products. So everything stems from my writing, and that's why I call it How to Make a Living with Your Writing, not just as an author, because I think having these multiple streams of income is the exciting thing. And as you said, the world has changed so much, but what I think is that the world will continue to change, and therefore it's quite good to have these multiple options for your income, especially if you want to do this full time.
Well, someone told me ages ago, Kenny Scotsman, he said, if you're going to have a business that's successful, you think of it as a table with 4 legs. So one of the legs falls off, you've still got 3 legs, and you can probably prop it up, but don't try and do it on a 1 or 2 leg table, because it'll fall over. And I guess this is one of the benefits, isn't it? So you can have, you've got a great pie chart that you got in your free video series, where you've been really open about where your 6-figure sum comes from, which is 50% books and then from speaking and the courses and things like that. And I've got a similar pie chart. It's not 50% books, but looking at it, it does come from the things I want to do, because I love working with people still. So a lot of my income still from working with people. But as I'm in my late 50s, and I might be thinking about this retirement word, but not retirement in the old sense of the word, where you just pick up your pension because there's no pension to pick up. My royalties are my pension. You can see then how, as your life changes and the demands on your life change, you could actually slew the pie chart to suit what you want to do.
Yeah, and I actually think this is super important, because you don't just want to design yourself another job. And I see so many people who are like, oh, I'm desperate to leave my job, but then they create a new life that is just as restrictive as their old life. So like what you're saying, I decided the living I wanted to make financially, but also the lifestyle. So for example, one of the decisions I made was location independence. So, I know you have dogs, and you're living in a house, and I am obviously in a house, but we rent, we can do everything from a laptop. We don't need to be anywhere specifically to make a living, and that's a decision that I made. So I don't hold physical stock. I have no physical books in my house. You can buy them online, but I'm not going to do physical stock. I'm not going to have a business that relies on me being physically physically in one place, and that shapes a lot of decisions. I'm a quite a chronic introvert. I'm finding, I'm very tired by people. People are very tiring, and so my speaking, I can really only do it maybe once a month maximum. So for me, I have to balance that out with the rest of my income streams. So in designing a life that you want to live, you can then look at, like you say, your pie chart and switch things around. And one of the great things about intellectual property, which is creating these assets that will make us money for the rest of our lives and 70 years after we die, according to copyright law, these are things that, as you say, they should make us more money the older we get, because we're creating more things. So, I'm aiming to have 100 books by the time I'm 50. So that's 10 years. I might even stretch that a bit further, But with the money from 100 books, I know people who have 100 books and they're making very, very good money as indie authors with that many books, because each individual one on each individual store in each individual country only needs to bring in a trickle, and you've got a very big income stream. So that would be just another tip for people. I'm very careful not to just have everything on Amazon as well. Like some people think, oh, self-publishing, you just put everything on Amazon. But no, iBooks, Kobo, other streams, selling direct, these are things that are important for your table, as you say, so that you're never left high and dry if some big company changes the rules.
So let's talk about someone with 0 books then. So not 100 books, but 0 books.
We all started there, didn't we, Tom?
There was a time when we hadn't written a book. We've probably written a sales proposal or something like that, I would imagine, and done some death by PowerPoint slides and that kind of thing in our old jobs, but we hadn't written a book. So where do you start? How do you sort of get your toe in the water?
Well, your first decision is it fiction or non-fiction? So this is a big deal because these are very different books to write. So I would imagine, given your audience, we'll look at non-fiction because, you've got a novel now, I think.
Well, I started out with a book of poetry.
Yeah, you did, but let's face it, it's not going to make you loads of money.
It didn't, but it was going back to that first book. It's the one that changed my career direction.
Yes, and
gave me confidence. People liked it, and it changed. And I ended up walking around London in a bra. I remember that story because of it. And I've written some short stories, and I've got this. I did start a novel, which I'm going to finish, and I'm going to do that next. And funnily enough, you talk a lot about genre. I want to come on to genre, and this is in dystopian future sci-fi, so it's right in that
genre.
Exactly. Anyway, let's not run before we can walk.
Yeah,
so you got to decide what you want to do. Let's assume it's fiction or non-fiction, because I think the Zone Show audience astounds me who's actually listening. Okay. So let's not pre-assume it's one or the
other. They're both
very
different. So there's quite a lot under both angles. So let's start with non-fiction, because I really think that most people, I think, can write a non-fiction book, because essentially you think about what you know. And it might be that you know how to, so let's take my example here, how to make a living with your writing. I wrote the book because I am making a living with my writing and I want to teach other people how. So maybe you can make strawberry jam. Maybe you're, whatever you are, maybe you can make IKEA furniture in under 30 minutes. Maybe you're teaching people how to read tarot cards, whatever. So take the topic that you are writing on. And I use a tool called Scrivener, which, is amazing. Brilliant for non-fiction and fiction, but for non-fiction, all I do, so I create my Scrivener project, and I just chuck everything, all the ideas I have around a table of contents into Scrivener. So for example, the strawberry jam. I mean, I've never made jam, but one of the things I think is, okay, where do I get the fruit? Or how much sugar do I need? A recipe for this. Do you put booze in? You can just brainstorm everything that you think people might want to know about that. And then you just fill in the blanks. So you just fill in each of the topics that you've written down, and then you go through an editing process and you get a cover and you put it out there. So for me, non-fiction is pretty much empty your brain on a topic in a journey, an organized fashion for a reader to read. And that's pretty much, a non-fiction book. For fiction, you definitely have to be a reader of the genre. So non-fiction has a lot of subgenres, business, self-help, cookery, whatever. But fiction has very specific genres with an emotional promise that the reader expects. So romance, for example, the hero and the heroine, or if it's gay, whatever, whoever the two people are, have to end up together. There has to be a happy ending. So that's one thing that's important. A crime novel has to have a dead body. A sci-fi novel usually has to have a space or something that doesn't actually exist in where we live now. A historical novel has to, happen sometime in history and has to be historically correct. Each of the genres the readers are very particular about what they read. So for fiction, you really have to be a reader of the genre. I'm a thriller reader, so I write thrillers because I know what I want as a reader, and therefore that's what I'm going to create. And then for fiction, you really have to go through the process also of learning how to write a story. And I'm just going to recommend one book for people. It's called The Story Grid by Sean Coyne, Coyne. That book will teach you how to write a story. It is fantastic, and I've interviewed Sean Coyne on my podcast. It's the one book that replaces all the other books, in my opinion. And that book, you will get through a story. And then for both of these, you have to go through editing, you have to go through cover design, and that's the self-publishing process.
So we've got the book out, which is great. And obviously, it helps if you've got a series, and you might be thinking about book 2 when you're writing book 1 and all this sort of stuff. But how do you then get it to market? People talk about this thing called the author platform. So do you need one of those while you're writing the book, before you even start, or during, or after? How do you get the book out? This is like your soapbox, I guess, isn't it? Where you say, here's my book.
Well, I do have a book called How to Market a Book. But I actually think what's interesting now is a fiction and non-fiction. Again, it's quite different. And the more I've done this, the more I realise it. And I have 10 novels and 5 non-fiction books. So, I kind of have a bit of experience now. But for fiction, you have to, your content marketing for fiction is more fiction. So the platform for fiction, I believe, is the number of books you have and your mailing list. You don't need to blog, podcast, whatever as a fiction author. You just need to write books. And the highest earning authors, you can have a look. Forbes' highest, richest author list have multiple books, mostly in a series, mostly genre fiction. So romance, mystery, thriller, crime, sci-fi, fantasy. The books that readers love, that's what sells. And those authors have a lot of books. They may actually have a really crap website and just a small mailing list, but they write lots of good books and do well. And I've certainly seen my own income. I make 60% of my book income from fiction, and that's because I have 10 books. If I had one book, I might be making 1%. It's not a function of, one book will get you nowhere. You have to have a good series. So I don't think you need a platform as such for fiction. For non-fiction, yes. So exactly what you're doing and what I do at the Creative Pen. So a website with useful information that people want for free, that draws people in, free giveaways so that people sign up for your mailing list, a podcast like this, a YouTube channel, a text blog if you prefer text blogging. Yes, all of those things I think for non-fiction are very effective in driving people to your book. But what I would say with non-fiction is very, very few non-fiction authors make their full-time income from books. Of all the big name people as well, they mostly make their money from the so-called back end, which is, speaking, course sales, consulting, and other things, because they are an expert. And for many non-fiction authors, the book is a kind of business card to lead people into something else. So how to make a living with your writing leads into my creative freedom course, which is how to make a living with your writing, but lots of video stuff and things. So that's the sensible business model with non-fiction. And with fiction, you can just write lots of books, and the volume sold is much, much higher. It's something like 60% of ebooks sold are genre fiction, and I think it's only about 15% are non-fiction, and of those you'll find that Malcolm Gladwell owns most of that market, for example.
Fantastic. Well, I love that this distilled wisdom of it must be 7 or 8 years now. Just that you actually crystallised something in my mind as well, because you just described my pie chart. The way that the books and the courses work together and this sort of stuff, and still to this day, I'd probably give a lot of the books away as part of my consultancy, or come and do a talk and you get a copy of the book free and all that, or inverted commas free, and this sort of stuff. So that tends to be the way. But certainly it's been, I can say it's been a fantastic door opener, and they've all been fantastic business cards. But maybe it's time for me to dust that novel off, which I've got this 4-part novel that needs to come out.
Well,
next,
and there you said it, 4-part novel. So you've got there will be 4 books in that grouping as such, and that is the important thing. If you were writing a one-off standalone novel, that is not going to do very well. 4 books will do well, and again, the same principle applies for fiction and non-fiction this time, in that having something for free that people can try. So if you have 4 books in a series, you can put the first one for free, and that will draw people into your world, and then if they enjoy it, they're going to go on and buy books 2, 3 and 4. Similarly, in non-fiction, if you have one book on making strawberry jam, you would then write another book on making raspberry jam, or making chutney, or making other things that would target the same audience. So when you mention genre, it just means grouping almost. It means people who read this genre will buy multiple books in this genre. I mean, like I mentioned about Sean Coyne's story grids, I own probably 60 or 70 books on how to write, how to write a story. I mean, I buy every single book in the writing niche because it's my passion. I also buy a lot of business books. I'm sure, you do as well, about entrepreneurship. So because I own one book, it doesn't mean I'm going to stop. I'm going to buy more and more. And same with genre fiction. If someone buys one thriller book, they're going to buy another and another and another. So we're never in competition with each other, and you should always try and network with authors who write similar things and promote each other, because readers are hungry for more books on the same topic or in the same genre.
And it's true then, isn't it? Because we met kind of through social media, didn't we? Then we physically met years later, especially when you moved to London. And I think, but we've probably only met in person twice in all these years, haven't we? I think.
Oh, really? It seems much more, Tom.
No, we've met. I remember we met at the British Library once, and also we met
in a tea room.
We had a coffee in it with lovely Orna Ross.
We did.
So, yeah, and we ought to give a mention to the Alliance of Independent Authors, haven't we? Because that's a great network to join if you want support and you want to know how to do it, and you want to be amongst people who have already done it. And as you say, authors are probably some of your best salespeople. You get other authors on board liking what you do. It's very hard to say, hey, look, buy my book, but it's very easy to get someone else to say, buy that book.
Yeah, really good point. And every month I send out to my fiction list, I promote, I do an author interview, and I do a book sort of promotion for somebody else's book. Every month in my email, I have a page of books I love, which I promote other people. And absolutely, the more you network and promote other authors, the more they are likely to promote you. I mean, I think we both call it like social karma. And, the more you give, the more generous you are online, I think that's the energy you get back. So, both of us try to avoid the snarkiness and the negativity of many of the online forums. And that's why I like the Alliance of Independent Authors, because, it's a very positive minded community where we are empowered creatives who believe that together we are stronger, and that we don't have to ask permission for anything. So, yeah, I think that energy of giving and helping other people, it will definitely come back, albeit perhaps from another source.
Indeed, I always say that about random acts of kindness. But do them every day, but don't expect it to come straight back from that source. It'll always come back from an unexpected source. And actually, one of the things you talk about in the video series is doing this whole thing ethically. Is that really important to you?
Yeah, I really, it is. I mean, that's partly your personality and our personality, I think. But also, what's so brilliant about creating things? I mean, I've got on my wall here, have you made art today? My driving force is to create new things in the world. And whether that new thing is one of my books or a video or a podcast that might help somebody, that might touch somebody's life. I always wanted to be Tony Robbins, that kind of British Tony Robbins sort of self-help guru who can change people's lives. And that still drives me. And I think that ethical side, you can make a very good living ethically. You don't have to do anything badly or wrongly to make good money. And you and I both understand the money energy doesn't have to be from bad stuff. You know, people sometimes associate it that way, but it's not at all. So for me, I get income from fiction books because I provide entertainment, and people pay for entertainment. You know, they want to escape their lives for a couple of hours, and, you know, they can do it in one of my books. And then for nonfiction and the courses and speaking and podcasting, it's education and inspiration. That's what we provide. So if you just focus on those things, so entertainment, education, inspiration, those three things, you can do those things ethically, absolutely, and make a good living. And everyone's happy.
Well, of course now, because I love the idea, don't I, that an ebook is about the same price as a coffee in Starbucks, and a print book is less than the price of a pizza in Pizza Express or something like that. You know, so these are consumables, but when you consume them, they've not gone like a pizza or a cup of coffee. You can use what you brought from them, which is kind of interesting. So it's nice that as individual authors we can actually generate a consumable which is scalable. And that's another big thing that you talk about, isn't it? The scalability of this whole thing, because any one of your books can sell 1 million.
Yes, and I don't think that many people, like, the penny needs to drop on this. It's like when you create a book, it's not one thing, it's one manuscript, but it can be you can sell it on multiple ebook devices, you know, from Kobo, Amazon, iBooks, all of that. Then you can turn that into an audiobook. That's another format. You can do a print book. That's another format. You can multiply that by the number of countries you sell in, and I've sold books in 68 countries now worldwide.
Wow.
In English. So this is not through translation. I do have translation, so I have 4 different languages, but they haven't sold nearly as well as the English book, so we're super lucky. So if you think about there, that's like, you know, one manuscript turned into 3 different formats, multiplied by 68, multiplied by language. You've got, like, wow, that's a lot of income streams. And then you can start, say, with a non-fiction, you turn that into a course. So your strawberry jam, again, you could film yourself making strawberry jam and sell the videos, same product, you know, same information, just in a different format. So yeah, the scalable to me is you create it once, and then it can multiply into all these streams of income. And again, it can make you money for your lifetime and 70 years after you die. So whether you have children, if you have children, you know, leave it to your children, your grandchildren. And if you don't, then you can give it to charity. You can create a foundation. You know, I'm excited about the longevity of copyright and scalability of copyright, because it's just incredible. And I think when people realize that one book is so precious, it's a very empowering thing. And if you want a traditional publishing contract, you have to realize that they are not doing you a favor. They are trying to make money from you, and you know, they do that by exploiting the copyright. So we're so lucky now is that as indies we can do it ourselves, and that's what I do. Although, you know, I also am interested in the traditional publishing side, but you know, we can do it ourselves.
And that's the other good thing, isn't it, about the whole social side of this, and especially the Alliance of Independent Authors, is that when I do all my, apart from editing and proofreading, I do everything, cover design, the whole lot, because I've got that kind of skill set and base. Now you can judge by my covers have I done a good job of that or not, but it's what I wanted to do. I wanted to own that bit of real estate, if you know what I mean. But one of the great things out there is that there's a whole raft of people that can help you do the bits that you can't do. So you're not reliant on the publisher that you used to be to do the technical bit of it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and interestingly, many of the cover designers and formatters and editors actually come out of traditional publishing. That because of the way the industry's changed, many of them are hired freelance into the publishers, and we work with the same people. So the quality of book covers, for example, and editing is very, very high. And you know, if people are, you know, wondering where to get these people, you know, I have lists on my website. You know, you can ask any author who the editor is, or often it's in the back of their book. So yeah, absolutely. And we're very open, you know, Indie's very open. We share all this information freely. So yeah, it's not, I'd say there is a learning curve on how to publish, but you and I know the publishing part is nothing compared to the writing and creating process and the marketing process, both of which you have to do whichever way you publish.
Yeah, and one of the things I say to people is that you can be very creative about generating the book, and if you use that same creativity in your marketing, then it doesn't feel like hard work either. It's kind of fun then, isn't it, to do? So talking about creativity anyway, I want to catch up with you and your books. What? Because the last book I read of yours was One Day in Budapest, and I was in Budapest at the time. How about that?
I saw that, and that was lovely of you. And of course, I went to Budapest, and I saw on Twitter, I think you were having a look at some of the places I'd written about that you actually visited. And much of my process is based on physically visiting, traveling, which I love. So my latest book is called Deviance, and set in London, and part of the London Psychic trilogy. And it's more of a murder mystery. It's a little darker perhaps than my action adventure stuff, my Arcane series that you were having a look at, and yeah, I mean, it's my 10th book. Deviance is my 10th book, and I feel like I've learned an awful lot about writing books, and I'm still loving the process. And the process becomes, like, I know you talk a lot about, well, the zone, obviously. For me, the creative zone, I've now kind of worked it out, and it's made writing the book not easier, but I understand how it works now, in terms of I understand that I don't need to understand. Perhaps that's the best way of putting it.
Can you just get into the zone on the drop of a pin? So anytime, if you say, now I'm writing, do you switch into that? Or is there a process that you go through?
I can't do that later on in the day. So I have to do my writing, my creative fiction writing, in the morning before I move into, something else. So for fiction, I go to a cafe or the library. So I need to go away from where I'm sitting now in my house, because at this desk I do podcasting, I do other things. So I need to get out of the environment where I do other work. So I go to a cafe or a library. I usually do a 2-hour slot where I'm writing actual words, and I have already thought about what I'm doing, and I might have a couple of, I don't massively outline, but I have maybe 10 big scenes that I have one-liners on in Scrivener. So this is after thinking for a while, obviously, and then when I sit down, I plug in my earphones and I actually listen to rain. So I have rain and thunderstorms on repeat.
This isn't a band called Rain. This is just white noise rain.
Rain and thunderstorms.
Well, you just had to open your window today, and you could have listened to rain in the UK, couldn't you?
As soon as it rains, I'm like, I must be writing. But no, that noise. I'm sure there's a brainwave effect of rain, but I just put in rain and thunderstorms to block out the noise, any ambient noise, and I either set my timer or I pretty much use the need to go to the bathroom as a natural break point. So I'll generally write for 90 minutes, sometimes 2 hours, and I will finish a scene, so around 1,500 words or 2,000 words, or a chapter of a non-fiction book, and then I'm pretty much done. So my hardcore creative bit is done in about 2 hours. And then for the rest of those fiction days, I will be researching and planning for the next day's writing session. And then I don't write every day. I do. I have phases, so I'm more of a binge writer. So I'll be starting the next book in a couple of weeks' time. I'm working on a course at the moment. So I think it's the biggest tool that I would say that people can use is a diary. So if you actually plan in your diary, like you would a business appointment with your job, is go to cafe, for half an hour and write. Schedule that as you would any job thing. And also, like, many parents, it always makes me crazy. They'll schedule all their children's stuff on a calendar and they won't do it for themselves. So all those parents who schedule their children and not their own writing time, I mean, that's a big deal. So schedule your time, figure out how to get into some kind of concentrated state. Write, time it. I think times writing is really important, and then, get on with the rest of your day, basically. And that's the first draft phase. Obviously, editing is a different matter.
Fantastic. That's a great tip. I do the same thing. I make appointments with my with my chapters. I also studied, when I wrote my book on light bulb moments, why people have light bulb moments in the shower or when they're having a pee. There's a physiology and neurology behind it. So we won't go into that now. So
everyone gets good ideas in the shower. I think there's like waterproof notepads and things you can get now so you can write things down in the shower.
Fantastic stuff. So listen, you've got 2 personas online, haven't you? So people want to get you from get into your fiction. They find you, where's that?
Yes, so my fiction is at jfpenn.com, and the F is for Francis. So jfpenn.com, or all my books are in print, ebook, audiobook on all the big stores, online stores. And for my non-fiction, I write under Joanna Penn, and again on all the big online stores and at thecreativepenn.com. And I have a podcast as well, and lots of information on self-publishing and making a living and that kind of thing.
So the latest book then, How to Make a Living with Your Writing, that comes also with a video series, doesn't it?
Yes, so you can get the book, or you can actually sign up for the video series for free at thecreativepenn.com/freedom. And the first video there is 11 ways to make money as an indie author, which I know many people are interested in.
Fantastic. Well, I think the other thing we need to do is put a date in for 2 years down the line to have another podcast to see track where we are then, and see how it's all going. And perhaps then you'll be coming back and be talking about this 7-figure income that you've been generating.
Yes, well, and I actually think it's really good to say that, because 1, we're putting it out there into the universe, but 2, I think ambition for creatives is really important. Like, part of the thing I feel is proving to my young nieces and nephews that you can make a good living, a very good living in this day and age, with something that is not considered a proper job. It drives me crazy that, it's considered a opting out of life to be creative, whereas, we're proving that creativity can also make you a good living. So yeah, I am on a bit of a mission, and I will look forward to be back on your show, Tom.
Well, listen, it's not just a good living, is it? It's not a good living, a good amount of money. It's also a good living from the ethical perspective as well.
And a good life.
Yeah, wonderful. Who wouldn't? Well, what a lovely note to leave on. Well, so basically, I recommend everyone reads one of your books to see how it's done. Certainly gets hold of a copy of How to Make a Living with Your Writing, because I can't think of a better way of having fun, giving some gifts back of things that you learn also, and also then the universe coming back to you with some cash too. And I certainly gave up my pensions when I was 50, so I need something to rely on in my later years. And I also like the idea of leaving a legacy behind. That idea that there's only one thing you can take with you, which is your evolution, and one thing you can leave behind with your art. I think that's a lovely epithet.
Oh, well, thanks so much for having me on the show, Tom.
A pleasure. So it'll be 2 years' time.
I'll see you then.